Alrighty, guys, we're back again with another video today. I definitely wanted to do a little bit different of a video. Recently, I've been doing a lot of videos that I feel like have been more critically focused about some of the gameplay and the systems in Shadowlands, and I wanted to talk about the top 5 things that I'm looking forward to in Shadowlands. Basically, my criteria and things that I'm looking forward to and things that I enjoy are typically more gameplay focused. I don't normally care about mounts or like any of the transmog or like the changing in the leveling process. I do have some honorable mentions that we're going to go over at the end as well, over things that I think that will be interesting, but most of my criteria for things that I look forward to the most are typically gameplay focused. So without further ado, let's jump into my top 5 things that I'm looking forward to in no particular order. Alright, so with this, we have number 1 that I'm looking forward to is a new weekly cash system. Basically, it's called the Shadowlands Great Vault, and it allows you to pick your weekly cash reward. So basically, for those who don't know, it will give you opportunities to be able to pick loot based on how many raid bosses you end up clearing, how many mythic dungeons you end up completing, and how much conquest points you end up being awarded in PvP. And then it allows you to pick from items of that respective grouping. Like for raids, if you defeat 3 raid bosses, you have the opportunity to pick one piece of loot and from the raid instance, basically based on the difficulty that you're getting it from, and it will be from the raid instance, which will be very nice to be able to deal with. Mythic dungeons, very similar thing. If you complete one mythic dungeon, you have the opportunity to be able to select one piece of loot from mythic dungeons themselves. And basically, it allows you, so say you complete 5, you're able to pick from either the 1 mythic dungeon that you did or the 5. And that will be just a great change as a whole. I am very much looking forward to the opportunity to be able to not get hands 2 weeks in a row from my weekly cash and stuff like that, and actually be able to pick. It allows you to either go deep, and if you want to do 15 or 10 mythic dungeons, they actually changed it to 10, it's no longer 15. If you want to do 10 mythic dungeons, you're allowed to go deep on the content that you do enjoy, such as mythic dungeons, or you're allowed to go wide. So say you want to do 1 mythic dungeon, 3 raid bosses, and then earn 100 conquest points, and then be able to pick from 3 different options, you're allowed to do that as well. I think that the Great Vault and the new weekly cash system are definitely things that I'm looking forward to in Shadowlands. All right, so I've self-described the number 2 on this list as, quote, just let loot be loot and the potential for tier sets to return. Basically, this is in conjunction with the removal of Warforging / Titan Forging, corruption, that kind of thing. Where Ian, in his interview with Sloot, talked about the RNG behind the gear, where is like the RNG going to lie, and Ian in this interview was talking about just letting loot be loot. They were still undecided on sockets. I suspect sockets are still going to stay just because jewel crafting would then be kind of axed as a result. So I suspect that jewel crafting and sockets are going to continue to be in the game, but maybe they're going to end up changing something like that. I would be super hyped for that as well. But they're going to remove the existence of Warforging and Titan Forging and will not be coming back, and just letting loot be loot. They're going to cut down on the amount of loot that you're going to be gaining as a whole, and I am super stoked for this. I also really look forward to the opportunity that tier sets may end up returning. I think it's still TBD, but say tier sets do return, I like just the variance of the that it gives you and grants your class, and as well as like it changes the balance from tier to tier from what's OP. Sometimes you strike a balance where you're the unfortunate 5% 4-piece tier bonus class, and sometimes you hit the lottery and you're that 11% class, and you're like, man, we are doing mega damage this tier, and we own. And the pendulum just swings based on how well designed the tier sets are sometimes, and it really allows you to be engaged with your class. It also creates some form of transmog, which is not my highest priority, but it also creates some transmog that people care a lot about. So just let loot be loot, and the removal of Warforging and Titan Forging is something that I am super stoked for come Shadowlands. Okie dokie. So the next thing I got on the docket for things that I'm looking forward to in Shadowlands are the new affixes. So we talked about this loosely on Titanforge podcast this week, but there are 3 new affixes that have been data mined and are potential candidates to make it into the live rotation. And those are Inspiring, Spiteful, and Storming. we don't know how everything is going to end up working out with these affixes yet. I suspect that there will be more information in the upcoming days, but I'm looking forward to new affixes. In addition to that, we do have speculation on how Prideful is going to end up functioning, which seems to be the new seasonal affix. That seems like the most reasonable thing. But with Inspiring, Spiteful, and Storming, this looks like this will either be in addition to the current affixes or potentially even replacing some old pre-existing affixes. And basically what Inspiring is some non-boss enemies have an inspiring presence that strengthens their allies. Spiteful is fiends rise from the corpses of non-boss enemies and pursue random players. And then Storming is while in combat, enemies periodically summon damaging whirlwinds. And honestly, the reason that I'm actually looking forward to these new affixes is that I feel like that anything affix related for me, I am very excited for, because we have had the same old and kind of bland affixes since Legion, like since the inception of Mythic Plus, and I did not want another full expansion of just the exact same kind of bland affixes. So those 3 new additional affixes. In addition to that, there's a pseudo rework on both volcanic and bursting. You're allowed to dispel bursting stacks. That makes classes with like mass dispels and revivals very strong. It also still makes immunities good, and then it just allows healers to be able to dispel bursting stacks. Volcanic knocking players up. You're now more punished for whenever it's Volcanic week. Previously, Volcanic was kind of a meme affix, and I felt like it was hard to balance. So them adding a knockup component to the Krakatoa volcanoes, I'm looking forward to the change in the shakeup in affixes just as a whole come Shadowlands. All right, so the next thing that I am very, very much looking forward to is the removal of artifact power, Azurite power, undisclosed power, anima power, undisclosed power named AP, whatever the hell you want to call it. No more infinite grinding of artifact power and Azurite power via world quests is very much something that I'm looking forward to. I hate doing world quests. I'm not huge on island expeditions as well. Grinding dungeons for AP was also some of the most miserable times that I've ever had playing World of Warcraft. Doing things like that is actually just... It was terribly unfun for me, and anything that reduces the grind of AP, especially at the beginning of patches, and the removal of that moving forward into Shadowlands is something that I'm heavily looking forward to. It allows you to spend your time doing other things, and I hope that there will still be some like daily chores, but while turning from a chore simulator into allowing you to do more content that you're looking forward to is important. Like, sure, like right now you have to do like a weekly Mythic Plus, some weekly Conquest cap, do weekly raid, island expeditions if you really want to min-max, then you have to do like emissaries, you have to do your assaults, you have to do your visions, you have to do so many daily chores that if they were to cut down on chores and remove AP, I think the AP is like the source of a lot of the chores, so the removal of that will be for the benefit of the game, and that's something that I, as a relatively high-end player, am looking forward to immensely. And last but certainly not least, the number 5 thing that I'm looking forward to in Shadowlands are changes in the legendary acquisition and how they are going to be gained by the players. So historically, we've had problems with acquisition of a lot of systems, whether or not it be essences, whether or not it be corruption, it be Legion legendaries. Azurite was annoying until they added the vendor, but then it got then it got significantly better once they added the vendor. Changes in Legion legendary acquisition from the start seem like they're taking notes and are a little bit more refined from what stuff has been in the past. Basically, you will go to your Memory of the Rune Carver, and you have to have the recipes in order to be able to craft Shadowland legendaries at the Rune Carver. Basically, you have to go and you have to obtain them through specific means of acquisitions, whether it be drops from raid or dungeon bosses, and there are many ways to be able to acquire whatever legendary you're looking for. Right now, I guess you could see it as kind of tedious to be able to like have to do research as to where to find the Rune Carver legendary that you want to craft. But as a whole, I feel like this is pretty good. As long as there is a way in game to be able to tell where you go to be able to get that specific legendary, I suspect that this system as a whole is going to be better than any system that we've had previously for being able to obtain such substantial power gains like legendaries in the past. Basically, as long as they do have something, like, so whenever you hover over your essences, currently in the native and base game, it will tell you where to go to be able to obtain, like, the next level of the essence, or like the first level of the essence. And as long as you are able to find that in game, and it's like, oh, this is dropped via this raid boss, this is dropped via your weekly cache at Renown Rep 20 or whatever PvP honor vendor, as long as you were able to actively tell where to get legendaries from, and it's not this super hidden thing, I think this is going to be a great system, and I am very much so looking forward to how this all ends up working out. Dungeon bosses don't have 100% drop rate on the memory, but raid bosses do appear to have 100% drop rate. Kind of frustrating that dungeon bosses don't have 100% drop rate, but dungeon bosses are farmable. You're able to farm the dungeons and the bosses themselves over and over again if you really want to. So you are able to get that if you do want to dedicate enough time. Whereas raid bosses, weekly lockout, it's kind of annoying if it didn't have 100% drop rate. It looks like it's going to be great. Legendary recipes also appearing to drop regardless of your loot specialization. Honestly, the whole change in legendary system and legendary acquisition is something that I am significantly looking forward to. All right, so that was my top 5 list. Let's go over some things that were some honorable mentions, just kind of rapid fire these out. I'm not going to go over these too heavily, but these are things that I do also find very interesting that were very close to making the list. Revamped leveling, that's, I think, something that will help the player base as a whole, changing it from level 120 to go from 0 to 60 as a whole on the leveling process. That seems like a pretty good change for the game. Just the total revamp in the leveling, also allowing you to kind of go through whatever zones you really want to at certain levels to be able to gain those levels. Really allows you to take the path that you kind of want. It also allows you to optimize leveling in a way that we haven't seen in a while. Next is easier to play alts, not specs, like not off-specking, alts in general. Anything that doesn't have to doesn't require you to farm specific essences I'm looking forward to as well. There should be easier to play alternative classes. Sure, you're going to have to grind some things out like legendaries and gear, but as a whole, you're not having to grind to like once you don't have like corruption, you're so substantially far behind. You don't have cloak resistance, you're so substantially far behind in the current base game. So easier to play alts is something that I'm looking forward to, because there's not layers on layers of systems that are going to be rather obnoxious for you to gain. Yeah, you're going to have to do some bullshit with your covenant. Yeah, you're going to have to do some bullshit with going and farming out your legendary, but these are self-contained, and you kind of know what the end game is going to be, and you know how to get to that. It's not like waiting for RNG of corruption out of your weekly cache. Next thing, speaking of corruption, removal of the corruption slow. If I could go the rest of my life without being randomly slowed for 70% just on a whim for no apparent reason, I would absolutely take that world, because getting corruption slowed is actually one of the most obnoxious things for me. So the removal of that, I am very excited to never get corruption slowed again. Next is increase of character customization. Again, most of my things were gameplay focused, because that's more of my area of expertise and area of things that I find that are just enjoyable in the game. So, but the increase in character customization is really nice, and just the ability to be able to go to the barbershop, and like you have the new character customization screen at login. There's a lot of very cool things with character customization, and more options and more choices for stuff like that. A lot of people are going to enjoy that, and I think it's cool. And last, but certainly not least for honorable mentions, you're able to travel form in the Maw. Get wrecked, nerds who don't play Druid. Maybe you should re-roll to a better class, bitches. Checkmate. And with that said, that's going to be the end of the video. Check down the description for all the Wowhead articles that I used for this. In the meantime, check out my other videos. I've been streaming a lot lately, so do check out all my content down in the description. I really appreciate all of you guys who've been watching lately, and I hope to see you guys later. Peace out.